The aim of this lecture is to introduce students to key concepts, debates, and challenges in education and development. First of all, when we think about education for development, several questions come to mind. The first is, what is the purpose of formal education? Is the purpose of education social and cultural reproduction? Is it to produce workers for the labor market? Or is it to increase the quality of life and living standards of individuals and communities? Secondly, who should provide formal education? Should it always be provided by the state, or can non-state providers such as NGOs or religious institutions also provide education for a community? Third, who should pay for education? Is education always paid for by the national government, or should it be paid for by the individual or the community? And fourthly, who should attend formal education? Is it only for young people? And by young people, is it for preschool children? Is it for youth? Is it for adults? Is it for the disabled? Is it for ethnic minorities, etc.? Who should attend formal education? Hopefully in this lecture we will answer some of these questions, or at least provide thinking points for further discussion. Education is extremely important for development. In fact, one could argue that it is the single most important development intervention. This is because educational participation is both part of the definition of development as well as a means to achieving it. Education can provide a foundation for sustainable development by providing young people and adults with, first of all, literacy and numeracy skills, life skills, which would support a health promotion agenda, giving young people the confidence to protect themselves from HIV/AIDS, for example. Education can provide young people and adults with vocational skills, which would support a poverty reduction agenda. Education can provide young people with knowledge about climate change and environmental sustainability, respect for cultural diversity and gender equality, respect for peace, tolerance, and human rights, and perhaps most importantly, the confidence and critical thinking skills they need to face life's challenges. There are several international policy frameworks and commitments related to education. The first being Education for All, which since 1990 has been an international policy agenda supporting education for youth, adults, preschool, the disabled, as well as special types of education such as vocational education. The second key policy framework is education is a universal primary education is a target in the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs. The third major policy framework is education is an international human right as outlined in various international declarations and conventions, such as the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the International Convention for Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination, of all forms of discrimination against women. And there are specialist bodies for education, such as the icon on the lower right-hand side, INE, which is the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies. There are several challenges to educational provision in developing countries. Many children, 69 million children in fact, in the developing world are not enrolled in school, and many more fail to attend regularly or to attain basic skills such as reading or writing. Most of these children, almost half of them, are in sub-Saharan Africa, and more than a quarter are in South Asia. One of the main barriers is access to education. There are many reasons why children in particular do not have access to education. First of all, there are home factors, such as lack of parental care or interest in education. This is particularly the case for street children. There's also poverty, the direct and opportunity costs of education. The direct cost of education are school fees, textbooks, school uniforms, school materials that children are required to purchase. The opportunity costs of education being the money that a family loses when they lose a child's labor. In many cases, children do not have access to school because they have too many household chores and childcare. This is particularly true for girls. In many cases, young people are engaged in economic activities, and there's also the case where young people are not able to access education because of the seasonality of their labor, or because of migration, or because of nomadic livelihoods. There are also traditional and societal factors which act as barriers to access to education. For example, there is fostering. Sometimes, particularly in West Africa, families send their children to relatives in the city far away in order to work. There's also early marriage and pregnancy. In many cases, perceived status and roles of girls and women are a problem, as girls' education is not seen as a priority. For example, one Ghanaian proverb is, "Why water a flower in someone else's garden?" Meaning that why waste the investment in girls' education when a girl will simply move to her husband's home upon marriage and the investment to the family will have been lost. There is also culture and religion. In many cases, girls are not permitted to attend school, especially madrasas, for example, which are all male. There are also personal child factors that pose barriers to access to education, such as peer influence. Maybe it's not cool to go to school, or the child themselves may have a lack of interest in school or education. Often there are school factors that provide barriers to access to education. So, for example, if the school is very far away from home, children may be afraid to go to school. This is particularly the case for girls who may fear sexual assault or rape on the way to school, or for both boys and girls in conflict zones where children are often recruited into militias on the way to school. There is also, in many cases, lack of school infrastructure, as you can see in the photo on the left. There may be a lack of water and sanitation. This is particularly problematic for girls because when they do not have separate latrines, they may feel shy to attend class. Many schools lack light and ventilation, and often classes are huge and students do not get adequate attention or have adequate learning materials, even if they do attend school. Another big challenge is in the case of emergencies. For example, HIV/AIDS. In the case of HIV/AIDS, young people often have to drop out of school when they're forced to, particularly girls, when they're forced to take care of sick relatives. In many cases, they themselves have to take on the burden of being a household head, and they have to go out and work and are not able to attend class. War and humanitarian crises, as you can see in the photo on the left, are also huge barriers to access to education. In many cases, the schools are destroyed, the teachers are killed, or young people or teachers are recruited into militias, or children are afraid to go to schools. Many children who do attend school often do so infrequently or are silently excluded in the classroom, and they eventually drop out. In fact, most of the world's children who are out of school at one point were in school but dropped out due to poor quality of education. Poor quality of education can take many forms. For example, curriculum may be irrelevant. The national curriculum may have been developed at the Ministry of Education at the national level. However, it's irrelevant to local needs and sensibilities. It may be also written in a language that is not spoken in a local community. There may be a lack of textbooks and learning materials. In many cases, it's a teacher training issue. Teachers are poorly trained and poorly paid, and therefore schools suffer absenteeism, teacher absenteeism, and teachers are not familiar with the latest and most effective teaching methods. Sometimes teacher attitudes and unfriendly school environments can make education very problematic for young people. Sometimes children suffer corporal punishment and bullying, both from teachers and from other students. Sometimes they experience harassment, abuse, and sexual violence. This is particularly the case for girls. Often there is discrimination within schools based on gender, language, culture, caste, or disability. And often for minorities and for girls, there is a lack of role models in schools. Related to poor quality is the issue of poor educational outcomes. Even if young people do attend school, they may not benefit from their education. This is because of, first of all, internal factors, where all children are not given equal opportunities to achieve. There is a lack of national standards in education. There may be poor, unfair assessment strategies, and many students suffer from delayed progression and become overage repeaters where they fail, and they're much older than their classmates. There also may be external factors such as inequitable opportunities to achieve in school, resulting in limited career choices and future earnings, or lack of job opportunities for graduates. So even young people who complete a cycle of education may not benefit from their education if it is not in line with labor market needs. There have been several practical and policy responses to these challenges. First of all, there have been interventions in terms of access. Schools close to students' homes have been built, providing clean water and latrines. Scholarships and school meals for children at risk are often provided, particularly for poor children. PTA groups, parent-teacher association groups, and involvement of parents has been sought as a way to encourage children to attend school. In some cases, particularly with ex-combatants in conflict zones and with young people who have dropped out of school, non-formal education and peer education have been utilized to integrate dropouts into school. Multigrade classrooms and activity-based learning has been used to accommodate large classes. And for child laborers, seasonal workers, and young mothers, flexible school calendars have been implemented, which allow these young people to attend school outside of normal school hours. And for pastoralists and nomads who travel with livestock, for example, mobile schools have been used in order to ensure that these young people are able to attend school as well. There have been several quality interventions which have proved to be very successful. First of all, there's been a push to provide relevant curriculum and train curriculum developers, textbook writers, administrators, managers, and teachers in inclusive education practices to make sure that even young people who are attending school are getting the most out of their educational experience. Another quality intervention has been to end academic streaming based on gender. So not to limit young people's girls' opportunities by promoting them, by encouraging them to enter low-skilled and low-paying and part-time, low-status jobs. Also, there has been an attempt to monitor teachers' attendance and performance, and to include life skills programs that challenge gender roles in national curriculum. There's also been a push to provide vocational education and training to make curriculum relevant to the needs of young people and to help them to help their efforts in employability after they graduate. Also, there has been a move to provide positive role models for young people, particularly for girls and for ethnic minorities, and to provide career counselling. There have also been several outcome interventions, such as training teachers to understand how their expectations may influence assessment of students, For example, if teachers don't believe that girls can learn as well as boys, their expectations may influence how they assess girls differently from boys. Outcome interventions have also included the use of various question types, such as multiple choice, essay, and short answer in examinations, balancing classroom assessment methods, using verbal and written evaluation tools, reviewing existing assessments to determine whether the examples and language used are free of gender bias and stereotypes, and ensuring that examples reflect a balance in student experiences. There are several ongoing debates related to education and development. The first is around human capital. Is the purpose of education to learn or to feed the labor market? Is there necessarily a correlation between what is taught at school and the needs of the labor market? Secondly, does education always result in poverty reduction? Do higher qualifications always result in better paying jobs? What about educational inflation, described by Ronald Dorr in The Diploma Disease, where he describes a scenario in which higher and higher qualifications are required to do the same job? Is the purpose of education socialization or transformation? Should the curriculum teach young people what to think or how to think? For an example is a quote by Paulo Freire in Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Education either functions as an instrument which is used to facilitate the integration of generations into the logic of the present system and bring about conformity to it, or it becomes the practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to participate in the transformation of their world. Should education always be provided by the state? Is there a role for non-state providers such as NGOs or religious institutions? Should non-state providers deliver services, complement services provided by the state, or be the providers of last resort? And what are the implications, the positives and negatives, the pros and cons of non-state providers of formal education? What are the implications of educational planning in the context of population mobility and globalization? What are the implications for countries who lose educated individuals, which we often refer to as the brain drain, and for those who gain them, the brain gain? If you want to learn more about education and development, I suggest that you pursue I suggest that you look at the websites of the following organizations: the British Association for International and Comparative Education, often referred to as BASE, and the UK Forum for International Education and Training, often referred to as ACFIT. There are several journals that you might find helpful, such as Comparative Education, Comparative Education Review, Compare, International Journal of Educational Development, International Review of Education, Journal of Development Studies, Journal of International Development, Prospects, and World Development. Thank you for your attention.